Hi, everybody. This is Marr Brown. I'm a keynote speaker, author of 3 books, business coach, and corporate executive in sales, marketing, and management. And we wanted to, my good friend Peter Nelson, Peter Clark Nelson, who is next to me, obviously on the screen, but next to me, we put together a tremendous course called Love Your Legacy Now. It's an e-course that is going to be released in the late September timeframe. And what we thought we'd do in preparation for that course is to take a few concepts from the course and put together a series of short videos to really give you some insight as to the information and the power and the life-changing aspects that the course will have for those that choose to take it. And so we're going to talk about a concept today called tribal shaming, which if you've never heard that term, we will let you know what it's all about. But it's something that will affect each and every single one of you, as it has affected Peter Nelson and I over the years. And we want to talk about what it is, how it works, and how we can, as a collective, unit, understand what you can do and what we can do to effectively deal with tribal shaming and not be affected by the potential negative effects of it. So with that said, I'm going to have Peter introduce himself, and then we'll dive into what tribal shaming is really all about.
Thanks a lot, Jamar, and welcome everybody to this newest video for Love Your Legacy Now. My name is Peter Clark Nelson, and I work with entrepreneurs, subject matter experts on unleashing your inspired voice. I do that as a ghostwriter, as a content advisor, and also a breakthrough strategist. Essentially what I'm doing is working with individuals to clear out their energetic blockages and helping them identify the energy or the energetic signature of their inspired message, and then aligning that with the heart of their audience. And really the purpose is to raise the consciousness of the planet and raise the vibrations of individuals. And that's really what this whole course is about, which is ultimately going to be put into a book as well. It's about learning how to not just get your voice out there and inspire and empower people, but to enjoy the process of doing that.
Absolutely. And one of the things that really connect Peter and I is this idea that we're both driven and we have a tremendous passion around helping people uncover, unlock, and unleash their potential in the world. And we live that our own lives every single day. That's what we strive to do. And that's what we teach to the people that we work with. And one of the things that happens when you do uncover, unlock, and unleash your potential is sometimes you're met with something that's called tribal shaming. And that's a term that I first heard literally years ago. And actually, Peter was the one that first told me about it when I wrote my very first book. And some things happened in terms of the support I thought I was going to get from certain people in my circle that didn't happen. And I wasn't used to that experience. And so I called Peter and I said, Peter, let me explain what's going on. And Peter said, well, Jamar, what's happening is something called tribal shaming. So I won't dive into the story yet, Peter, but give us your perspective in terms of what tribal shaming is.
Well, it has so many different forms, and it's subtle and it's not so subtle, that I'll do my best to make it as succinct as possible. Tribal shaming is utilized as a way to keep people in a certain level of conformity. So when you think about the way in which most people were raised and educated, we were brought up in a society that is rooted in maintaining what is referred to as a status quo. Mm-hmm. So when we say the word tribe, a lot of times people, they harken back to centuries ago, like, we're not tribes anymore. We're, civilized human beings. A tribe is a unit that exists based on rules, based on beliefs, based on certain ideologies. And I'll give an example in terms of just how vast this can be.
Okay.
So let's say, for example, it's a company, because you used an instance earlier about when you wrote your book and you thought some people were going to support you. Well, from an organizational standpoint, you go into a large company, mm-hmm. you have the micro and the macro culture. And mm-hmm. this is the same thing for society.
Okay.
So what I mean by that is you have the culture of the company, which is the macro aspect of it. Mm-hmm. That's the status quo for the company as a whole. But you have multiple divisions and departments within the company.
Right.
Each department, each division has its own tribe. And within each department are a multitude of different tribes with their own little ideologies. So the thing is that when we are raised to believe that we can achieve whatever we put our mind to, like we've all heard that. Mm-hmm. We live in a success-oriented society. Mm-hmm. The problem is that success is predicated on the rules and the laws, so to speak, or the ideologies of whatever tribe you're a part of. So you're allowed to be successful up to a point.
Mm.
And if you get to that particular point and you begin to break through the glass ceiling, or you begin to redefine the status quo, then all of a sudden you start to recognize very quickly that the people that are closest to you, it's not just the so-called haters out in the world going, well, I don't want that person to be successful. That's one aspect of it.
Mm-hmm.
The part that we're going to really be talking about in this video and in the subsequent videos and also in the e-course is when people are close to you and you turn to them for the support and for the love and for the acknowledgement and celebration of your success, and you don't get it, and it comes in some very subtle ways that you might not recognize, and that subtleness will begin to poison your own thoughts and your belief systems, and you can be very quickly and easily shamed and blamed into limiting who and what you are, and the effects of that are disastrous. So my point in saying all of this is that tribal shaming is the single most destructive characteristic of humanity. And so we're going to talk about how to deal with this a little bit later in the video, but that's the essence of it, and hopefully that made some sense.
It made complete sense, and I think it really educated so many people that are either dealing with it right now, have dealt with it in the past, or as they break through and unleash their potential, will deal with it. In my situation with the book, I mean, I like to speak from personal, situations sometimes, it was, and I want people to really listen to sort of the progression of the story. So I was a corporate executive doing extremely well in sales and marketing, salesperson of the year, sales manager of the year, and that's what I was known for. But I have this internal passion to want to write this book. Now, it took me 7 years to write the book, and that's a whole other module we'll talk about in terms of how do you eliminate the blocks in your mind that prevent you from doing things that are in your heart. But to make a long story short, I finally wrote the book, and then the book was about my journey of going from last place in sales to first place. And there were so many people that I had, sort of hired and helped along the way. But I thought that when the book was released, all these people that I've worked with over the years would buy hundreds of copies for their sales teams and their companies. And I received a lot of support. Don't get me wrong. It wasn't like nobody bought the book. But then there were certain situations where, certain people didn't or didn't return the phone call. And here's the deal. I didn't know at the time that I had transitioned from a certain sort of corporate identity in terms of what people thought of me to now this author. And there's probably so many layers in terms of people's perspectives and thoughts about what I was doing. But it really was the fact that I was doing something that was outside the tribe. It was different. It wasn't conforming to the rules and regulations. That wasn't something that was anti-corporate. It was actually the quite opposite. It was positive and motivating. But the bottom line is how many other people around me had written a book. And so when Peter sort of coached me on how to get through it, it was absolutely tremendous. One of the things I wanted to share that helped me to get through it was the fact that I was reminded that we are given gifts and talents to share them with the world. It's called the voice of distinction. And when you try to hold that voice back, it affects you in so many ways, physically, psychologically, emotionally, mentally, and that's much worse than when you unleash your voice and do what you're supposed to do. And the relief is tremendous once you understand how to get past tribal shaming and the fact that you'll be introduced to new tribes. And so I don't want to get into the whole story, but I just wanted to share that because we speak from personal examples, personal experience, and the things that we talk about in the e-course as well as on these videos are things that we have personally dealt with ourselves or we have coached people through. We didn't, get one of the books that are back on the shelf and read, oh, that's how you do with tribal shaming. No, we actually dealt with it ourselves and got through it. And this is a topic that's so important for me because, my good friend Peter here was the first one that told me about it and helped me to get through it. And after that point, it allowed me to write 2 other books and do other things. And that's the release you can get when you get over tribal shaming. And so, Peter, we'll just, kind of wrap up, but, give us your final thought in terms of tribal shaming. And then we'll talk about the other video that we're going to release very soon is also an aspect of tribal shaming.
Absolutely, Jamar. And thank you for mentioning, just some of the conversations we had years ago about this. And a lot of people are probably wondering, well, okay, I've experienced tribal shaming, so how do I deal with it? Mm-hmm. There's a lot of ways to deal with it because there's a lot of forms in which it shows up. A lot of it is subtle. And to borrow a line from the Sherlock Holmes movie with Robert Downey Jr. when he says, well, that's so overt, it's covert.
Right.
Well, this tribal shaming, as I said earlier, is the single most destructive characteristic of humanity. It is systemic. It's in every area of our culture. It is in every area of our life. And oftentimes it gets hidden because people romanticize the suffering of the past. So, you know, as you get further away from your past, you happen to look in the rearview mirror and you see things that maybe aren't as clear as they used to be, and you sort of repress the bad things that happen. I'm not suggesting we walk around remembering all the bad shit that happens, right? But we got to be clear as to where it's permeating through our thoughts and how it's affecting our drive to be successful,
right,
and to enjoy life and to be fulfilled. So the number one key in handling tribal shaming is to become consciously aware of its existence. And once you're aware of its existence, then you can begin to delve deeper within your own past and your own, you know, the echoes that go around in your mind. And you can begin recognizing where you've been subjected to tribal shaming. You can also recognize where you've played your role in tribal shaming of other people.
right.
You know, this is not about looking at yourself as a victim, or you're looking at yourself as the victimizer. It's recognizing that tribal shaming affects both the shamer and the person's being shamed. That's something you wrote about in the course. And when you said that, that really kind of brought me into a conscious awareness going, oh yeah, of course, that makes perfect sense. So the number one thing is become consciously aware of its existence. And in our next video, we're going to get into some of the very specific nuances of tribal shaming. What are some of the phrases that people use that you wouldn't even think are shaming you? And then what are some of the more extreme versions of it? And so that's, I'm looking forward to covering that with you.
Excellent. Well, everyone, I hope you got a lot out of this short video. You know, tribal shaming is such a big issue. And as Peter mentioned, it's one of the biggest detriments to people's success and unlocking their potential. And I can't wait for you to actually look at the course and take the course in September. In the meantime, like this video, you know, share this video, because there's so many people out there that have experienced it, are experiencing, or will experience some form of tribal shaming. And then be on the lookout for the very next video that will be out very soon. Peter, thank you very much. Everyone, thank you for checking out this video, and we'll see everyone soon. Take care.